What is up, football fans? I'm Danny Austin. This is the Live from the 55 podcast. We're filming in our Marda Calgary, Alberta, Canada studios, and we are going to talk about CFL. But I think you know where we're going to start. We're here in Calgary. I've been covering this Calgary Stampeders team since 2016. I did not think they were making the playoffs. And guys, they are in the playoffs. Unbelievable. Did not see this coming. I'm going to be perfectly honest. Anyone who listens to this podcast regularly knows I thought this team was done. I really did. I didn't see it. A couple weeks ago, they'd won 4 games. They kept losing games that I thought they should win. It didn't feel like it was getting better. It didn't feel like there was improvement. And what you want, you're like, okay, you're struggling this year. You want to see areas of improvement. And I wasn't seeing them. So here I was. I believe on Wednesday, I had John Bender on, and I was saying they were going to get massacred by the BC Lions. Instead, they come out, they win 41-16. They run the ball down BC's throat, something that fans have been waiting for a really long time. It helps when you're ahead. It helps when the run game is clicking. You're going to hear me talk with Ryan Ballantine, and I do sort of make the point that there were a lot of times this year where people were mad that they went away from the run, and I just didn't think the run was working in a lot of those situations. So they had to try to get points on the board, and I thought their pass game was the better option. Today, or this weekend, we saw, look, when this team gets up and you got Kadeem Carey and Peyton Logan, you got Dedrick Mills waiting in the wings. He basically carried the load for most of this season. This team can run the ball. This team can play good defense. I liked the way that they pressured Dane Evans. I liked the way that they pressured Vernon Adams. Cam Judge with an absolutely, like, this guy, just the guy was already a star. So I don't know how to say it. It was this star making. What was this? Pick 6 against the Riders, basically turned that game around, saved the season. I've tweeted this. He was exceptional. Forced fumble, interception. Cam Judge is an absolute superstar and is the most important player right now on this Stampeders team, along with sort of like Reggie Begelton, and then obviously the quarterback matters. But massive win combined with the Toronto Argonauts beating the Saskatchewan Roughriders 29-26. That means that the Riders can no longer finish ahead of the Stamps. Stamps have the tiebreaker. So even if they lose to Winnipeg this weekend, they're in the playoffs. It's unbelievable. Excuse me. You think about everything that happened this season. Think about how many low moments there have been, moments where it's felt like there's no hope. For them to be in the playoffs, 18th straight season, this may not have been the most inspiring year, but you credit where it's due, man. They persevered. They fought through. Now they're going to be facing the Lions again in BC in 2 weeks' time at BC Place. I don't think that we can read a ton into Friday's game. The Lions weren't playing for much. They obviously rested Vernon in the second half. I don't think that they were going full playbook. I just don't think that we can look at that game and say, well, they beat them 41-16. They're obviously the better team. The Lions have been a great team all season. They're in that sort of top tier. I mean, I have the Argos in a tier of their own, but then for the sake of it, I do think that it remains the most likely Grey Cup winners are them, the Bombers, or the Lions. The Argos beating the Riders too. I mean, man, think about what that means. Like, they are right now 15-2. We don't get 15-2 teams in this league very often. I mean, I guess last year, the Bombers were 15-3, but they have the chance if they beat Ottawa, the worst team in the league, in their season finale this weekend. They're 16-2. That doesn't happen. These Argos are exceptional. I'm not going to say that anyone who watched that game against the Riders is going to be blown away. But Chad Kelly, 18 for 25, 275 yards, a touchdown. Yeah, I threw a pick. They were running the ball well. They're just so well-rounded. They're good everywhere. I just think that, yeah, we should be talking about them as one of the greats. If they win against the Red Blacks and then go on to win the Grey Cup, this is one of the all-time great teams, and I'm really excited about that. I think it's exciting for the league. The way that organization has turned itself around under Ryan Dinwiddie with Pinball, Corey Mace is defensive coordinator. I just think this is a really, really good football team. It's a lot of fun to watch. And then Winnipeg beat up on Edmonton 45-25. I'm not going to spend too much time on this game. For all of the conversation about who these Winnipeg Blue Bombers are, Are they getting old? You're going to hear, I've already recorded sort of my pre-conversation with Ryan Ballentine before recording this introduction. Ryan's not convinced that the Bombers are going to win any playoff games. I am. I think that they seem like they're starting to click. I do think Dalton Schoen being injured, being out for the rest of the season, as far as we know, is a big loss. But the Bombers, they're another one of those teams. They just kind of go out and do what they got to do for the most part. There have been a couple games where they haven't, but they're 13-4. Like, what are we talking about here? They are not. They have not fallen off that far, guys. They're still 13-4. They're on a 3-game win streak. I imagine playing Calgary this weekend. I don't want to be like, oh, that game's going to be terrible. I do say that a lot with Ryan. But I still think go to the game, guys. Like, go have fun. But I imagine they're going to rest a lot of guys. I imagine the Stamps are going to rest a lot of guys. It's crazy that the Stampeders are in a position where they can rest players in the last game of the year to get ready for the playoffs. How did that happen? Absolutely bizarre. But yeah, I don't know. It was a pretty decent weekend. Sets up a pretty rough weekend coming up here in the final regular season or final weekend of the regular season. Farmer Stamps, this game doesn't count for anything. Hamilton, Montreal doesn't count for anything. Other than, I don't know, is there any advantage you can gain? Those two teams are going to be playing a week later in the East semifinal. Is there something? Can you gain a psychological advantage by going out and laying a beating on your opponent the week before a big playoff game that actually does matter? I don't know. I mean, if you could, maybe the Stamps gain something on the Lions. I have a hard time with that, though. I do think that, when the lights are on, when it matters a little more, that's not typically, what happens in a game that doesn't matter much. I don't think tells us much about the games that do. So, anyways, Toronto Ottawa finishes it off. As I said, that'd be cool if Toronto can get to 16 wins. I would be really exciting. We're gonna have Ben Grant on the show on Wednesday. Wanted to get a Toronto media perspective there. Just I think that they have to be the story of the season. And yeah, like I'm not gonna tell you that next weekend's gonna be the world's greatest run of football games, but we're here. We're almost at the playoffs. And if we know one thing about the CFL, it's that whatever happens in the regular season, all of us look back at the end of November and take a deep breath and just think, what just happened? That was unbelievable. It happens every year. I end up the night of Grey Cup just saying this is the best league in the world for all those reasons. So we are right there. We're at the fun part. And we've been at the fun part for a while. Labor Day onward has been interesting. It's just I've been so in Stamps world, and it hasn't necessarily been the most fun time prior to the last week and a half. There's been a lot of negativity and a lot of worry and just feelings of, is this organization going in the right direction? But hey, they made the playoffs again. I got to eat crow a little bit. I got to sit here. I got to admit I was wrong. Didn't see it happening. It happened. There we go. Anyways, really excited to have Ryan Ballentine on. Really, I don't know. It's a really good conversation. We talked about a lot of things. Just kind of let the conversation go. But shout out to you. Thank you for listening. We're gonna throw out one of our sponsors here, but I do want to quickly thank Mugs Pub. You know him, love him. Major sponsor, Fraser and Fig too. We couldn't. This is our first year here doing live from the 55, first season, and we couldn't have done it without them. And they're just, they're the best. So thank you to the listeners. Thank you to Ryan. Let's get to him, guys. Let's say you're having a party. Let's say you're having a picnic. Let's say you're having any occasion. I got to talk to you about Fraser and Fig, because I love these guys here in Martin Loop. A couple storefronts down from our studio here. Fraser and Fig, man, these guys do these delicious elevated cheese and charcuterie boxes. They're made with all these fresh artisanal ingredients, on-demand grazing, pickup, delivery. You got it. Just let them know what you want. They will get it to you. Honestly, I'm such a big fan. I had a picnic a little while ago. I brought one of their curated boxes, and it was a huge hit. I looked great. People loved it. We're hungry. They weren't hungry anymore. These ready to go boxes, they got them in 4 sizes. All their boxes come with meat, cheese, dried fruit, fresh fruit, nuts, olives, pickles, and carrots. Their selections vary from month to month. Choices are always new. Just because you've had one doesn't mean you've had them all. I love Fraser and Fig. I love having them as a sponsor. They're the best. Make sure you check them out. Tell them Live from the 55 sent you. Ryan Ballentine, 3 Down Nation, the Go Stamps Go pod. I wanted to have you on, but I felt like I had to have you on. I'm going to be honest about that. And I'm going to open the floor to you, because throughout, I think that I had you on at the end of July would have been the first time,
Mhm.
and I said the Stampeders are 2-5, maybe at that point, and have the Argos, Lions, Bombers, and Argos again before Labor Day. And you were like, I'm not worried. Saskatchewan's not very good. Pretty much what you said to me. At the end of that stretch, I had you back on. You have maintained optimism about these Calgary Stampeders. So I just open the floor to you. And if you want to say, I told you, you are allowed to say whatever you want.
Well, so here's the thing, and I don't know if you guys have the ability to dig back through the archives and run the clip.
I'm
or
gonna
not.
try, but I don't know if we do.
If we can, the clip that you're about to see, or the clip you should see in this moment, is when I said that the Stampeders would make the playoffs with 6 wins. I think a team in the West could make the playoffs with 6 wins.
Yep.
And so can Calgary be 6-12?
Yes.
And I think they could. I think they absolutely can get to 6-12, and I think that might be enough to make the playoffs in the West. I thought at that time, taking a look at what was going on, taking a look at Saskatchewan and Edmonton and how they were playing, I said it didn't matter if the Stamps were 2-9 going into Labor Day, because coming out of Labor Day, they had Edmonton twice. Now, they had ended up losing one of those games, and they picked up a win against BC I wasn't expecting, I'll be honest. But Stamps clinch a playoff spot with 6 wins. And I think look, is it a great look for the Stampeders organization that they could be 6-12 and with a playoff spot? No, but is it a good look for the Stampeders organization that for the 18th consecutive season they've made the playoffs? I think it is. This is a team that, could possibly, potentially cause some damage in the playoffs if they get the kind of pressure they got against BC last week. I don't know that BC brought out a full playbook. I'm willing to wear that tinfoil hat.
This is the thing we don't know.
I'm willing to bring out that tinfoil hat and say that BC would rather play the team they stomped twice than the team that came within a touchdown of them both times, because the Riders came within a touchdown both times. They beat the crap out of the Stampeders twice in the regular season. But is this be careful what you wish for? I mean, if they allowed Calgary into the playoffs, is this where we find out that they shouldn't have?
Well, it's fascinating because, I mean, if we're starting with looking ahead, it's not just that they made the playoffs, it's also that they really beat up on the team that they're going to be playing in round 1. Like,
yes.
that's the big accomplishment here, is you've got BC in BC and you just beat that same team by 25 points.
Right.
I suspect, look, I mean, they pulled Vernon at halftime. The Lions literally, he wasn't great in the first half.
I was about to say he'd only scored 3 points, and that was on the last gasp of the half, and was completely ineffective, was on the run, and was getting hit regularly. And do you want to allow your QB to be hit like that many times headed into the playoffs? They didn't pull Vernon to give the Stampeders a better chance of winning. Dane Evans played better than Vernon Adams did in that game. They pulled Vernon because they didn't want him to get hurt. They didn't want him to get beat up, and he was getting beat up.
Yeah, I can't disagree with you. They didn't play Keon Hatcher. All I'm saying is that there is evidence there that the Lions, rightfully, as they'd earned their right to do, were saying, okay, that like we're gonna this one's okay if we lose. So it's a little hard for me to look at this game and say, okay, well, the Stampeders have proven they can beat the Lions in the first round of the playoffs, because I also watched all the other games the Stampeders played.
Yes.
Like, this was unequivocally their best game of the year,
which is crazy considering Jake Mayer passed for 123 yards.
It's nuts.
123 yards, and the Stamps had 41 points. Now, granted, a lot of that I think was field position. I think a lot of it was the fact that the Stampeders were awarded with a short field on several occasions because of turnovers and other things. And, you got good returns out of Peyton Logan that shortened the field as well, that still turned into points for Calgary.
And then they were running the ball really, really well.
Yeah, they were running the ball incredibly well.
200
and I think 203, 213, somewhere around there.
Yeah, something like that.
Over 200 yards, but under 220. I know that's the range we're in.
On a quick calculation, it looks to me like 217 or 18. There's whatever. Doesn't matter.
There's also
why am I doing math?
there's
It's
also
Sunday
Jake.
morning.
There's also Jake and Tommy's runs in there,
Yeah.
which I don't necessarily always count those when I'm talking about rushing totals, because it's one thing. Like I love Tommy Stevens, and I wrote a big piece, part of my article about him on the post game recap about Tommy Stevens and the efficacy of Tommy Stevens in short yardage, which was magnified, I think, in this game when you look at Dom Davis, the 34-year-old fumble machine. Like, what is happening with the BC Lions that they're not as effective on third down, and they've still got a 34-year-old career backup as their short yardage guy? But that's another topic.
Yes. Let's stick with the offense to start.
Right. Okay.
I'm going to try to keep us focused.
Yes, please.
It's to your point. I mean, they didn't need Jake to throw for more than 123. They're going to in the playoffs. So that you can do that. You can do that little. Look, to stick with the offense.
Yeah,
I saw a lot on Twitter of like, oh, finally they remembered that they can run the ball.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's a cute idea that misses a couple points. First of all, there were a lot of games this year where they could not get the run game going. They tried, it didn't work, and they went away from it. Could they be more patient with it? Potentially. I don't think that their offensive line, without Bryce Bell, was playing to the point where they could really rely on that run game through a big chunk of the season. I actually have never had an issue with the way that they use the run game. They just didn't have Kadeem Carey and Peyton Logan. They were literally like, Dedrick Mills, we need you to carry us for 15 games this season, basically. Secondly, they were never ahead like this. Like, it's basic football that when you're ahead, you run the ball. They were never ahead like this.
But counterpoint, Kadeem Carey had more carries in the first half than he had in all but one game this season.
How many games has Kadeem Carey played a full game this
he
year?
played 10 or 12. He played 10 or 12, and he had four games where he had double-digit touches, and 2 of those he only hit 10. So one game, Kadeem Carey had 14 carries, and he had, I think, 14 or 15 in this one. But if you look at when
several of those he got injured in, so he's really only had 6 games this year.
You think he's only played 6?
Like, he got hurt in week 1.
He got hurt in week 1. Yeah,
and then then when he came back, he also had to leave a game.
Yeah.
So prior to Friday night, Kadeem Carey had 5 games this year. Like, let's be clear that Kadeem Carey has not been like a real
Kadeem
option.
Carey has not been the Kadeem Carey we expected.
He just hasn't been an option
because they haven't been as effective in blocking for him. And I agree with you that the offensive line has not played well enough to justify running the ball as much as I think fans wanted them to run the ball this year, especially coming off of last year. You have Mills, who has been fantastic for this team. But when you look at, I understand the idea that you have more rushing attempts when you're ahead, but their best offensive looks this season were against Toronto and BC, and their best offensive looks were when they were running the ball all the time. And I don't think in these games that they were losing, that they were ever behind enough to abandon the run. And this Stamps team really abandoned the run anytime they were down by more than a score, and sometimes 10. If once they got down 2 scores, the run game became completely an afterthought.
Which, like, I'll hear the critique of. My thing was that I never found that the run game, like, whoever was in there, and I think Dedrick is a hugely important part of this team's narrative, as it was exceptional. I hope we see him again this season. I also understand that you have 2 guys with very fresh legs who provide a very difficult contrast for defenses to deal with. So going with Logan Carey makes a lot of sense right now, but it's also like, it sucks for Dedrick a little bit. But I mean, I think my thing was there were stretches, and I don't know if it was you. Someone came on, or someone in the press box was like, does it feel like they either get no yards or
it was
12 yards?
It was me,
on the ground. So, like, I don't think that the run game was ever reliably that, like, okay, it gets you 6, 7, 8 yards on first down, and then you get second.
Well, I think I said it was either 8 or nothing. It was either 8 or nothing, and so you either are 2nd and 2 or 2nd and 10 when you're running the ball on first down.
And this team could not put itself in 2nd and 10 situations.
No, because in 2nd and 10 situations they found an 8-yard pass.
Or they just found a little screen pass that got them no yards.
Well, yeah, sure. It was either 0 or 8 on 2nd down too.
Yeah.
And so either you're 6 yards into a new first down, or you're off the field. But I think what they did very effectively, I thought, was even when they did run the ball last night for no gain, which happened a couple times, they did find that slightly deeper pass yesterday to keep the chains moving. Yep. I think they and I don't have the stat in front of me, but I think they only had a 2 and out maybe 3 times in that game versus 9 times against the Riders a week before. And when you look at the difference in being able to hold the clock, like I think they had the ball for 10 minutes in the first quarter versus the 5 they gave to BC. I mean, stuff like that makes such a substantial difference in the success of any football team and in the success of this football team. When they're able to control the clock, control the ball, this team is able to beat anybody in this league. And they've beaten BC, they've beaten Toronto, and they now have BC, Winnipeg, and likely Toronto in their way between them and celebrating what would be the worst Grey Cup championship of all time. Because if this team and I'm rooting for these guys to win the Grey Cup. I never put aside the idea that I take my fan hat off. Like, I know who I am and everybody knows who I am. So I'm rooting for these guys to win the Grey Cup. But if a 6-10 or 6-12 or 7-11 team comes out to beat Toronto in the Grey Cup after they win 15 or 16 games,
it would be revenge for so many crap teams beating the Stampeders when the Stampeders were on top of the world.
But the Stampeders were 8-10 and beat the 14-4 Winnipeg Blue Bombers.
I know.
So
there would be some poetry to it, is all I'm saying.
Yes.
And I mean, okay, sticking with the offense, I think.
Yes.
You quite rightfully. I mean, we were texting a little bit during the game, as well as in your writing. Watching just Tommy Stevens this season has made me go back and just think to that West semifinal last year when twice on short yardage plays the Stampeders decided to get way too fancy and lost. Like, they basically lost the game on those 2 short yardage plays. One of them was, I believe, a Malik Henry run where just the blocking wasn't there. I forget what the other one was, but I remember at the time being like, why not just give the ball to Tommy Stevens? It's automatic. So I go back there, and again, I think that, to be honest, had they gotten touchdowns or even field goals, that would have been a much closer game that we would have looked back on differently. Instead, they got absolutely slaughtered. They seem to just recognize what they have in Tommy Stevens, and that, look, this guy's only going to do one thing. He's not going to throw the ball. No, but he's going to do that one thing, which is fall over for 2 or 3 yards. And he's going to do it again and again and again, and it's automatic.
I mean, I called him in my write-up this week. I called him 2-yard Tommy.
Yep.
And I'm sure that is not a nickname he will appreciate, because no quarterback wants to be known as a 2-yard quarterback. But when you need 1 yard, when you absolutely have to have 1 yard, Tommy gets you 2 every time.
Yep.
You put him in that 3rd and short, 3rd and 1, 3rd and 1.5. Tommy will get you 2. And he will get you that first down. And sometimes it'll be 4, sometimes it'll be 5, sometimes it'll be a 40-yard end run touchdown against Edmonton like we saw last year as he came around the corner. But Tommy Stevens is almost automatic. I think the stat that Farhan gave out was that the Stampeders are 20 of 22 headed into the game, and he had 4 more 3rd and short opportunities and was successful on all of them. The weird one that I didn't understand was Tommy taking the snap and Jake out at or Jake Mayer out at wide receiver as the end.
When the CFL made it a rule that you were allowed to
put 2 quarterbacks
at the same time, I was like, could be cool. I don't really understand the point of it, but it could be cool. It hasn't been cool. I'm just going to be honest with you. It has not been cool.
We haven't found anybody that's used it yet. Like the rule, that dribble punt rule that we got from Antwi from Montreal has always been a rule. It's always been allowed, but we never see it because it's difficult to execute and it's risky. And so they don't do it. And it's risky to have a quarterback out at wideout. And now, would I be interested to see Tommy Stevens lining up as a running back behind Jake Mayer in some sort of formation? But then you've also got,
he's just a running back.
But then you take the ball, you toss it back to him, and he can throw, he's got you've got to account for the idea that he can throw, so you can't blitz that formation because you've got effectively a stacked quarterback, and so now you have the pressure's quick and Jake throws it back and Tommy throws it over the top. Like,
I'm convinced
there's possibilities, but I don't think
they're
any
not
OC's
good possibilities.
but I don't think any OC's thinking about using it, because why would you?
No, and my theory is that it was just like the Chris Streveler, Zach
Yeah.
Collaros, like the month that we saw them basically rotating in and out, which is like the only time that I've really seen that work ever, was so exciting and so much fun that the league was like, well, let's see if we can get them both.
I think the Stampeders might disagree about how exciting and fun it was to watch Chris Streveler run over them.
I agree, but
you're right. Chris Streveler was very entertaining for what he was, and then he went down into the NFL and proved that you don't need an arm to be an NFL quarterback.
That's why Trey Ford will be there next year, whether we like it or not.
I think Trey Ford's going to the NFL next year.
I think that his speed is so unique, like it stands apart so much that I think that an NFL team would be crazy not to bring him on as a development project.
Interesting. I think he needs another year.
I hope that he spent his whole career in Canada.
I think Trey Ford's skill set could be very interesting, because when I talked to Mike Rose about Trey Ford after the Labor Day game, where Trey Ford ran for ever, and I asked him about it. He said, I haven't seen anybody that fast since Lamar Jackson. And when you look at Lamar Jackson,
because the first game the Stamps played last year, Trey Ford basically got one start last year, and it was against the Stamps. And I guess I could say this, but like Mike Rose was like, I've played against Lamar Jackson. Like, I'm not that worried about Trey Ford. And now, and the D line after that Labor Day game, we're like, no, he's fast.
Yeah. He said, I've never seen anyone that fast except Lamar Jackson.
Yeah.
That's the quarterback that he put against. He put Trey Ford's speed and elusiveness. I was going to say elusivity, but that's not a word. Elusiveness.
We can use it as my podcast.
Well,
we can say what you want.
Yeah, we can create. Who cares? He said Lamar. I haven't played out against anybody like that since Lamar Jackson. So I mean, that puts him in a pretty high caliber for speed and elusiveness.
And that's the thing. And when you have that, I just don't understand why an NFL team wouldn't want to at least take a look. I think it's really special. I think
it's whether or not he feels like another year in Edmonton might serve him better long term.
Yeah.
Because taking a half season flash, does he get the kind of guaranteed money he'd get? And if he did that for a full season?
Yeah. There's the injury risk, which I'm always like, if the money's there, take it. But I take your point. Like,
there's all kind of risks. It's why you take out a pitcher after the third inning, even though he's blown away the entire lineup, because analytics and injury possibilities tell you that that's what you're supposed to do. Sometimes we have to let the humans play football, even if there's a possibility for injury. Because where there's a possibility for injury? In the parking lot after the game. Like, I understand the injury risk is heightened in the game, but all of that talk last night when they were talking about Chad Kelly, I don't know why Chad Kelly's still in this game. How could you leave Chad Kelly in this game? Because Chad Kelly wants to play football, and the next football he's going to play is a month from now.
I said this back when Bo got hurt, and everyone was like, why is he in on that short yardage play or whatever it was? And I was just like, I don't know, man. Like, you can get hurt on every single play.
That short yardage play didn't make much sense because you have short yardage quarterbacks for that reason.
Bo clearly wanted to do it for some
reason.
Yes. We'll get to Bo.
And he's back for the playoffs anyway.
Yes, we're gonna get to some playoff talk. We're not only gonna do Stamps, although we're coming up in 20 minutes here, so I gotta kind of speed it along. Okay, I tweeted, I believe Cam Judge saved the Stampeders season single-handedly. I believe that the pick six against the Riders, the goal line strip fumble, and another interception. I have Reggie Begelton currently as my most outstanding player for the Stamps.
And I don't think you could change that.
I know, and I typically do most outstanding as offense, most outstanding defensive as defense. Obviously, there's just a part of me that, like, legitimately, this team I don't think is making the playoffs if Cam Judge doesn't come up huge in those moments.
Agreed.
I definitely have him as my Canadian, as my most outstanding Canadian. he's probably got to be most outstanding defensive. Let's be honest that no Stampeders are winning awards this year.
No, but I'm putting Mike Rose in most outstanding defensive.
Are you? Okay. Yeah. That's how I have it as
he
well.
He has more sacks in less opportunities this year than he has before.
I mean, he's been getting quadruple teamed at times.
Yeah, and teams are running the ball on the Stampeders more late, which means less passing situations for him to get back and get a sack in. And he's still, I think he's career high for sacks this year, or he's pretty. I know he's got 9 or 10. So I Mike Rose for me is the MODP, and that's only because I can cheat by having Cam Judge as Canadian. By having Cam Judge as a Canadian, you can say, look, I still nominated you for an award. But I don't disagree with the notion that he's potentially the reason why the Stampeders are going to the playoffs.
I mean, I don't think that they were like that pick 6 against the Rider. They are not winning that game if something doesn't happen basically right then and there. They needed something.
Yeah.
That's the thing. My issue with this FPP stuff has always been that it takes the context of big plays. FFP, whatever.
Pro Football Focus,
PFF, whatever it is. That's how little attention I pay to it. Other than this one guy who gets mad at me on Twitter all the time. I just don't care. I think the PFF's so stupid. Like, I think it's a great evaluation tool and completely useless because it removes the context of big plays from its calculation. So we're just like rewarding, like, you were good consistently throughout a game when, like, no, stars come up big in big plays,
right?
Big moments.
Right.
That's like
Reggie Bagleton's catch.
Exactly. Like, I think if we're doing stars of the week, it should be the actual people who, like, in the biggest moments made the biggest plays.
Right.
I think that's how you market a league, not this guy brought his lunch bucket. Like, I don't hate PFF. I think it's a really, really useful tool for football teams. I think using it to determine award, like weekly awards and monthly awards, is the stupidest.
I actually agree with you a lot.
Thing I've ever seen.
It's a GM's tool, not a fan's tool.
Exactly.
You're not going to sell me on, oh, this was the best performing linebacker because of the 6 opportunities he had to make a tackle. He made 6 tackles. Who cares?
Yeah.
Who cares? I don't give me actual, you're right. Give me big plays. Give me interceptions. An interception should matter more than a knockdown, or an interception should matter more. A pick 6 that wins you the game.
Exactly.
Should be enough to make you the best DB of the week.
But it's the scale that doesn't allow those big plays to go beyond the same number of points per play. And I just think it's asinine.
Yeah. In these 6 quarters, this guy played phenomenal. And so he's the player of the month. Yeah. I mean, other guys played 4 full games.
Do you remember when Dane Evans?
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm referencing. Yeah. This guy played 6 quarters, and so he's the best player of the month.
It's another one of those ones where I'm like, good one, Randy. Good one.
I mean, look. I mean, again, I get engagement, and if this is the only stats we have to talk about this season, like, I think it wouldn't be as bad. This PFF wouldn't be as bad if you could also check stats on websites reliably. Like, you know, the idea that Rene Paredes didn't exist in the kicker stats a couple weeks ago. The guy's the greatest player to ever lace up boots and kick a ball in the CFL, and somehow he's not even on the list on the CFL's website for this season, let alone historically. This season, Rene Paredes was not on the kicker stats when I went to look it up a couple weeks ago. And the guy's the best player to ever do it at his position.
I don't know.
He's the Doug Flutie of kickers.
The CFL's just got it. Like, somehow, like, they've survived this season, but it really does feel that way.
Yeah, yes. Yeah. It feels like we are absolutely, as fans, granting them all the good graces we can to be like, look, yes, we understand the stat system is completely broken, but we've resolved ourselves to it by now.
It's because at some point you can only complain so much.
Yes.
Without you becoming part of the problem.
Right.
And, like, I think it's incredibly embarrassing and completely unjustifiable that, like, the stats don't work. It is one of the basic functions that a sports league has to provide, particularly a group that is trying to drive engagement through things like fantasy football, all of those. It is, like, literally arguably the most important thing outside of the games have to actually be played. It's just at some point, I don't know, you complain about it for 7-8 weeks. You kind of look like a jerk when it's week 9 and you're still talking about it. It's clear they can't fix it. It's clear that this is Genius Sports' fault.
But here's the problem. It would be one thing if you were complaining about it in week 9 and the league was saying, look, we understand this is a problem and it's not going to be fixed until the offseason. That's not what they did. The league came out and said, we expect this to be fixed by Labor Day. Then they said, we expect this to be fixed within a couple weeks. And then in like week 14 of the season, they finally said, we understand this is a problem. It's been a complete disaster as a rollout. And, you know, we're trying our best, right? But it took them 16 weeks to get to that point. They had to have known before Labor Day that this wasn't going to get fixed.
I think they did. I mean,
so just say that.
I got calls from the head office being like, we're really sorry. Like literally, like they like behind closed doors, the league was doing the right things here. And I really do mean that. It was just literally the day after I got that call, which I very much appreciated. It was an acknowledgement of how hard it was making my job as a reporter, all of that. Okay, you know, that's sometimes all you need. All you need is to feel like you're being heard and seen and acknowledged. So I felt great about it. And then the next day is when Randy went out and said, this was not a failure. And I was like, oh, You're not going to privately acknowledge that this is a failure, but then publicly say, like, what is everyone like? No,
that's what I don't understand. And I think actually, I mean, I like Randy as a person. Every time I've interacted with him, I've gotten along with him. He seems like a nice enough guy. My issue right now is that the CFL refuses to admit a mistake. And when they don't, it makes them look worse.
I think that if this was a head office mistake, they would be admitting it. It is the fact that Genius is effectively the 10th team, right?
Yes.
Like in terms of like revenue splitting, all of that, like 1/10 of Genius of TSN's money goes to Genius as far as they've been brought on. Genius, as far as we understand, and I'm introducing that caveat, which makes this sound weaker than it is. I am 100% sure of this. Genius is the one that screwed up. They don't want to publish Genius. They are like terrified that people are going to realize that this deal.
But you need to have
equity to a company that can't put together a basic Microsoft Excel spreadsheet. But
you need to have Genius out in front of the people saying, yes, it was not good. It's not right. It's wrong. We're going to fix it. We're going to figure out our stuff. Like you need to have.
I'm not saying Genius are grifters, but I'm saying that grifters tend not to admit that there are mistakes in public.
I mean, that's a stronger stance to take than I'm willing to take at the moment.
Sorry, you can't put together a basic stat system.
Yes.
There was one that existed for years.
Yes.
This shouldn't be that complicated.
That to me is what the league's failure was not overlapping the two systems until they knew it was seamless.
The league's failure is not having something that high school sports have. Like you can, the stats should be there. And I shouldn't. I'm not actually saying they're grifters. That's ridiculous of me to say, and I'm not.
Yeah, you wouldn't want to be the My Pillow guy.
I just don't get it. And like, yeah, I think that there should have been more accountability on this. You know what? When the league sent out the wrong All-Stars last year, super embarrassing moment for the league. We got literally like there was
that afternoon.
They walked it back and they were like, we have messed up.
Yeah,
we are sorry.
Yeah,
we have screwed up. That's all people want from the stats.
And nobody gave them shit for it the day after that. No. You know what I mean? Like they came out. Everybody raged about this terrible list, and they got tons of social media engagement. And then they put out the right list. They got another ton of social media engagement when people were. But then it was forgotten almost immediately because the league immediately accepted culpability, said they were wrong, said it was a mistake, and fixed it.
There's a lesson in life here.
Yeah.
Accountability matters. Take responsibility for your mistakes, apologize when you make them, and people are generally going to let things go.
There is no more I think there is no more.
I shouldn't have called them grifters.
No. That's why I was like, let's walk that back a little bit.
I'm debating whether to cut that.
Yeah. But anyway,
I'm not going to do it.
But I think in that moment, I think in there's no more forgiving a fan base than the CFL.
No.
I think of all, like maybe the WHL has fans that will forgive their league for doing things, but the CFL fandom does not expect the league to be at the level of the other major professional sports in North America. We just don't. But what we do expect is when you do the dumb thing that we expect you to do, because we expect you to do dumb things, we expect you to say, this was a dumb thing, and we did something dumb, and we acknowledge it was dumb, and we apologize.
Yes. I'll be straight up with you.
That's it.
This is the last thing I'm going to say about the stats, and I want to move on and do some very quick awards talk.
Sure.
I didn't know that you could mess up the stats. Like I'm just going to be real. I just assumed this, going into the season, it never crossed my mind that what has happened this year was a possibility. It just seems so obvious that no matter what, you are going to have statistics for football, which is an incredibly statistically driven sport. The teams still need the stats. Let's acknowledge this. I've spoken to coaches, and they're like, "Yeah, it's a huge pain in the ass for us." So I just like that they managed to find something to screw up that I didn't even know was possible to screw up.
Yeah, I mean, it's great. It's uniquely CFL. Actually, I shouldn't say that, because I worked for the National Lacrosse League last year, and they had an issue with stats for a long time because they rolled out a new stat platform. Eventually, it got fixed, and it works really well now. I can say that I don't like the way that the stats are presented on the website. When you look at the team stats after a game on the game tracker, it's not easily digestible.
No.
When you look at it, and the sliding bars don't matter. So I don't know why you have those to show the proportion of interceptions from one team to the other. That doesn't matter. A number is enough. I understand as a human being that has been able to click to a website that 4 is more than 2, and I don't need a visual representation of that in a bar graph.
Unpacking it all, it did sort of seem like there was all sorts of stuff that's supposed to be for gambling eventually that they're trying to introduce. So I don't gamble, so I'm the wrong person to talk about this. I will say it sure doesn't seem like this whole gambling is legal and it's going to drive an incredible amount of engagement and save the league. We're a couple years into it, still waiting for the league to be saved, still not seeing any results there.
Well, I never actually believed that the league needs saving. And I've made the point on this show, I think, and on my show a dozen times, the idea that this league is constantly in trouble of folding is garbage. There's nowhere, the CFL is not going anywhere.
Single game betting was presented as this, it's gonna change everything. And it clearly hasn't.
I mean, although if you look, ratings are higher now than they've been in years.
Good.
So is that
attendance is down? It's a gate-driven league. That's all we ever hear.
Well, yeah, we hear it's a gate-driven league until they get their TV check. The TSN money pays the salary cap.
Yeah, if TSN gets a piece of the NHL package, are they going to have the space on there?
Well, but maybe if TSN gets a piece of the NHL package, then maybe Sportsnet wants a piece of the CFL.
Do we have any evidence that Rogers has even the slightest interest?
I think Rogers doesn't have the slightest interest because the league has basically, from the way it gets told around media circles, is the league doesn't even ask other media companies to bid on the CFL. They just keep going back to TSN and awarding them sole source contracts.
One way or another, Rogers owns the Jays. They are not during the summer bumping the Jays off the schedule for CFL.
No, but they have 5 channels. So there's no reason why you can't. And you have games on Saturday, you have games on Sunday. You've got the potential to do it. I get that you've got the regionalization of these channels, and it's West and it's East and it's Ontario and it's Pacific. But there's no reason why you can't say, okay, we're playing this CFL game on Sportsnet Ontario, and that just encourages people to buy their package.
I have no idea what is going to happen with the TV package. This is so far above my pay grade, but. It is the thing that I worry about a little bit is just, I think it's sort of understood that likely Rogers is not going all in to have all the NHL rights again. They will be presumably split up. We don't know in today's streaming era. That could be Amazon. That could be, there's all sorts of,
absolutely.
Genuinely, I have no idea. So please don't quote me on this.
I'd be okay if Prime added the NHL to their package.
Sure. Why not?
I already have it. So.
Same here. Just come to delivery.
I'd be more than fine if the CFL decided to partner with Crave, Netflix, Amazon, and any of those streaming services that I already pay for.
I don't want CFL on a streamer. I think it has to be accessible. It has to be something that you don't automatically choose to. You want people stumbling on the CFL.
But people aren't stumbling on the CFL now, because if you're not already a sports fan watching TSN, you're not stumbling upon the CFL on TSN. I think that's important in the States. I think it's important to be on a TV channel in the States that people get, because TSN's not a standard channel. You have to order it as a separate premium station.
I understand that, but there's still a lot of people who are getting TSN maybe because of some other sport,
curling or something.
Yeah, like I just think having it on the airwaves available to as many people as possible matters. I don't think the CFL wants to, I mean, unless they give a ton of money, I don't think that the CFL wants to be in a position where extremely casual fans, people who have never watched it before, are having to go and actively find it. I still think that just there is value in it being as accessible as possible. And I mean, I don't have cable.
But do you know who kills in the North American market now because they were on Netflix? Is F1. F1 had no American audience essentially before they were on Netflix.
And so I agree. And like for years, we would talk, you and I.
Yeah.
Being like, man, the CFL needs to do a Drive to Survive, not a documentary on 4 games in 5 weeks between the Argos and Ticats.
No.
But there's now, I honestly think that window of opportunity a little bit has closed. There's just so much sports documentary content right now.
But what you don't get of the stumble is the algorithm. What you don't get from having it on TSN versus on a streamer is you don't have the streamer trying to recoup their investment by constantly putting in front of you. I don't know if you watched the Netflix documentary about how Netflix began, but there, for anybody who hasn't, Netflix talked about how their what you think we should watch was always directly tied to whatever they weren't already renting. The movies that nobody wanted, they published as what you should watch when they were sending out DVDs and VHS cassettes. Excuse me. So I think what they're doing is they were recouping their investment by saying, "Oh, we really think you would like this." And so people are willing to give it a shot. And that's how Drive to Survive came to my thing. And I'm like, we're doing this today at this time. I was like, yep, we need to have this at 10 because I have other stuff to do. And because there's a race today. And so I am deeply invested in F1 now because of Drive to Survive, because I found it, because Netflix kept putting it in my, we think you'd like this. And they were right.
And I'm one of those people who, like, I've watched Drive to Survive and I think it's fantastic. I love it.
Yeah.
The whole thing. I'm one of those people who, like, I watch Premier League, like, pretty intensely. I'm an Arsenal supporter, have been for 20 years. So I had no interest in Welcome to Wrexham.
Right.
And now I, like, actively am chucking Wrexham scores.
Yes.
So, like, I know that it works. I'm not by any means. I just do question, like, there's like a Messi documentary, a Beckham documentary. There's so much sports content that I don't think it's the magic pill that it might have been 3 years ago for this league. I think what the magic pill for this league is get these things like stats right, stop making the mistakes, and continue putting a good product on the field. And on some level, hope that the XFL USFL thing doesn't work all that well.
The USFL, I think they're calling it now. No, what? No, I don't even know what the new. Yeah, I think it's USFL, United Spring Football League or something. Stupid.
I like that we're getting their name wrong.
The Markcast will be furious.
Punchy this morning. I know the Markcast. Hey, buddy. Real quick.
You know what? I got to give him credit. I want to give. Well, you know what? I'm going to give him credit publicly, and I want Reed. You just heard Danny say, "I like that guy" like 5 times. So Reed, who is Reed Johnson, who runs the Markcast. He was
love his passion. I really do.
Yeah, I was down in Vegas recently for work purposes. My kid is a Vegas Golden Knights fan, and Reed was there as a Kraken fan and got me both on their banner raising night. He got me their championship banner as well as the opening night towel, and met up with me at Vegas in midnight after a hockey game.
That's awesome.
To get it to me so I could bring it home to my kids. So
I genuinely love that guy's passion.
I like that guy beforehand, but like he's locked in my book now. The Marquest is a made show for me.
I think he's mad at me because I said that the Labor Day Classic should be at 2 p.m., not 5 p.m. And we had a little Twitter thing, but I love the guy. No beef there for me. Vernon Adams Jr. obviously is no longer in the MOP conversation.
No,
not. I mean, and again, another guy who I love is JC. I thought JC did an awesome drive conversation piece on why Vernon should be a couple weeks ago. It's not happening anymore. Out of the West, I ultimately it's going to be the Winnipeg Reporters who decide whether it's Oliveira or.
And it should be Oliveira.
I think it should be Oliveira. I'm going to stick with it. I don't have. It's still Chad Kelly for the league, right?
Of course it is.
Of course it is.
Of course it is. Yeah. If you're betting against Chad Kelly on MOP, you've made a mistake.
Like I don't
care what the odds are. I don't care what the odds are. If you're voting against Chad Kelly as MOP, you've made a mistake.
People got so mad at me for saying it on Twitter. And I'm not going to click on everyone who calls me a jerks because I say Chad Kelly's MOP.
It would take too long.
It would take too long. But I sort of assume that they're all from Winnipeg and that they're and not because there's anything wrong with people from Winnipeg, but because they're all supporting their own people and their fans and they're passionate and that's great. But Chad
it's Chad Kelly. MOP. It's Chad Kelly. Chad Kelly has not lost a game that he finished.
I know. It's crazy.
He hasn't lost a game that he finished. Not one.
Yeah.
He didn't finish the game against Calgary and they lost. He didn't play against Winnipeg and they lost. Those are their two losses. And he didn't finish and they've won a lot of games he didn't finish, but he left most of those games with the lead. Now, yesterday being an exception, Cameron Dukes got the win for Chad Kelly, even though Chad Kelly Argos weren't leading the game, but that's also on Dinwiddie for saying, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to bring in a kicker from Mexico who's never kicked in the CFL before because that's the game we're playing this week. We're playing the Riders, and we can just bring up a kicker from Mexico and hope for the best. The guy missed a couple kicks. That's why Kelly left without the lead. Chad Kelly is the absolute lock.
CFL.ca this week I don't know who the guy was, to be honest. And not that I don't know, I legitimately
was just credited to staff.
No, I think it was a guy from Toronto. I wish that I had that information. I'd love to credit him because I think he did a great job. He did is it time to start talking about the Argos as being
the best team ever?
The best team ever. And I saw some people being like, of course, it's way too early. And I'm like, guys, of course it's too early. This is also, let's have that conversation. There's nothing, this is sports. It is today, Sunday, October 22nd. I've actively not checked the news because it feels like the world is literally collapsing.
Yep.
We are living in such a scary time. I'm terrified. Doesn't feel like, anyways, the whole world feels like it's about to burn and it's terrifying. Let's talk about if the Argos are the best team of all time. Let's have fun with that. We got Ben Grant on the show specifically because I want to talk to him about that. They might win 16 games. They're awesome. We should be talking about how the Argos are awesome. And the easiest way to do that is put them in a historical context. And it may be wrong. They may not be the best team of all time. But if they go 16-2 and win the Grey Cup, they sure deserve to be in the conversation. So why not grow the league by having these arguments for fun?
Arguments online is the best thing that can happen to any sport.
Nobody gets hurt.
No.
Nobody gets hurt. It's fun. We should be.
Do you know who gets hurt? The people who don't put pineapple on their pizza and the people who don't put raisins in a butter tart. Those are the people who are hurt because they don't understand the joy that can bring you.
I'm with you the whole way.
But talking about this, I'd be very interested to see this Toronto team versus the 16 Stampeders. I would be that is a phenomenal matchup. And I think it's one of those things that if you go back in a historical way, I don't think you can put, the 16-2 Edmonton team that lost in '89 to the Riders. I don't think you can put them into that conversation because athletics has changed You know, the 1948 Stampeders may be the only undefeated team in CFL history, and they went on and won the Grey Cup. But let's be real about the athletes from 1948 and put them on the field with the athletes of today. That's not going to happen. So as athletes get better, as athletes get more talented, obviously the teams from today are better than the teams from before. Now, the one exception being the 1992-93 Chicago Bulls, who are the greatest team ever assembled on a basketball court.
I'm glad that Michael Jordan made a 12-part documentary about how great he was, so that he could, deny the fact that athletes got better through time.
Do you know what people did? They consumed that like crazy.
That was like early pandemic, and I was just at war with anyone who wanted to fight about The Last Dance.
It was the greatest piece of film of all time.
I hated that documentary. I loved it, but it was so obviously Michael Jordan being like, LeBron's catching up. Got to make a documentary reminding everyone that I'm better.
Yeah.
And it was like, was he not a producer? Like, he was involved. And
of course he was.
Everyone was like, this is amazing journalism. And I was like, it's not journalism.
No,
it's a
not.
lot of things.
Of course it's not.
It's a propaganda piece
it's not.
designed to preserve Michael Jordan's brand, which he doesn't need because he makes billions every year.
Yeah.
Sorry, went on a
you know what I really enjoyed? I did see a meme the other day that was like, they say that LeBron James is one of the most clutch Game 7 players of all time. And then there was a picture of Michael Jordan, like, what's a Game 7? I don't even. And so I was like, it gets you right where it hurts.
I interrupted you. I will say, that 2016 Stamps team is the best. 2016 and 17 were the two best Stamps teams I've covered, despite them not winning.
Yeah.
Great ups. I've got to give, it's so hard with these Bombers because,
you have to give the Bombers credit. They've been good. They've been great.
The COVID season was messed up.
Yes.
But 2021 and 2022 are sort of their peaks as far as we can tell. And they win in 2021. That team should be, it's just all of us. There's no asterisks, but I don't think we talk about them as one of the greats of all time. And then last year, they were so phenomenal, but losing the Grey Cup, which is similar to those Stampeders 16 and 17 teams.
Were they 15 and...
I can pull that up.
I think they were were they a 15-win team? Because I think you have to have 15, 16 wins to be in this conversation.
Excuse me. They were 15-3. So
15-3. So they're in that conversation.
They were right there.
But I don't remember them blowing teams out. I mean, the 2016 Stampeders team blew teams out on a regular basis. And yes, they stumbled and didn't win the Grey Cup, but I felt like every week you were picking the Stamps to cover.
Yeah, it's going to be the Argos. If they go 16-2 and win the Grey Cup, they absolutely. Ryan's got a little bit of a cough. I got you water. Do you want?
Yeah, I'm sorry about that.
No, don't be sorry. We also literally, I've kept you for significantly longer than I promised. So we're going to let you go. But I think that the Argos will absolutely deserve to be in that conversation. And I think, to be fair, the fact that part of what I like about that team is there are stars. There are huge stars. But that is one of those teams that really does feel like everyone's on the same level. It's the team. And they've done an amazing job. Who's the Saskatchewan Roughriders head coach next year?
Ooh, that's a good question. Here's what I'll say about Saskatchewan. What they should be doing is throwing every dollar they can afford at Jordan Maximic, but they're not going to do that. I think that's what they should be doing. I think we'll see how the rest of the season plays out for Calgary. But I think what you do in Saskatchewan, so
you're not just going for me, if Scott Milanovich is available.
Yeah, I think it's probably Milanovich.
I think that's a great hire.
I don't. I've never really seen him as a.
He's won Grey Cups, and it sure looks like his involvement in Hamilton has sort of been a key part of turning that Ticats team around.
Yeah, sure. He's just another guy that's on that carousel, right? Do you know what I'm not interested in? A guy that's already been the guy. Look at what Dinwiddie's done as the guy who wasn't the guy.
Look,
look what Dave Dickinson did when he came in, when he was the guy that had never been the guy. What the CFL has done, and what the NFL does too. Every league does this. That's why Lenny Wilkins is both the winningest and losingest coach of all time. Why Wally Buono is both the winningest and losingest coach of all time. because these guys get these jobs and then he's already been a head coach, so he gets better. I'd like to see, I mean, is there anything that says that Mark Killam's not the guy?
I think Mark Killam would be a fantastic hire. There's no, I like literally, this is not a but. This is not a Mark Killam would be great, but this is like, what I wonder about is after having a special teams coach, is it going to be easy to sell the fan base on another special teams guy coming in to be head coach? I think Killam's name has been around enough and people have enough respect for him that I think most fans would be good with it. I just also think like the Stamps are coming off a bad year. Like I think that the Riders are going to want someone who instantly fans are like, okay, we got the right one.
Yeah, if that's the guy, if that's the splash you want to make, I think you're throwing all your money at Mike Simic.
Okay.
But I don't think they're going to
hire Mark Killam.
But I think that's what they should do.
Please.
Yeah, someone should. Mark Killam deserves to be a head coach in this league. And if you ask the guys in the Stampeder locker room, will tell you that Mark Killam is absolutely a guy you will go to war for.
I had a player DM me within the last 2 years. I'm leaving this as vague as possible so that it's not clear. Who was like, can you get out? Like, just push that my team should hire Mark Killam, because he was like, players around the league will come here to play for Mark Killam.
Yeah.
Whereas the guy that the other person whose name was out there in the mix, media-wise, he was like, guys won't come.
Yeah.
Guys won't come. So I fully believe Mark Killam should be like, look, I think that my brain immediately goes to Stampeders people I've covered. I think Argos did a very smart thing getting Corey Mace re-signed.
But his contract is still got to have an out if he's got a head coach opportunity,
for
right?
sure. But
so
it also though speaks to, hey,
Corey Mace has been on my podcast since he was a player. He was on my
Corey Mace is the best.
Since he was a player, he was a coach. Corey Mace is a guy, like I texted him after the game last night. I was like, hey, thanks for putting the Stampeders into the playoffs.
There's obviously an out.
Yeah.
Obviously there's got to be an out, but it's still
But I think he feels comfortable where he is.
Exactly. I think he could use he'd be happy to do
another year or two.
They're building something that Argos team is not.
They're not going away anytime soon.
Not going away anytime soon.
Although, will they still be able to afford all their talent when Chad Kelly's money kicks in?
Like, no, not all of it.
So that'll be interesting to see the impact of not having a nearly free quarterback.
It's going to be for
next season on what talent they're gonna have to lose.
Yep, they're going to lose some for sure. Now, I honestly don't know if I did this on the podcast or not, but at some point in the last couple of weeks, I was either talking to a friend or talking on the pod, and I was like, if you could get one guy who has left the Stampeders back this offseason.
You and I talked about this, I think. Yeah.
And my argument was like, well, as much as I love Jameer, like it would be Jameer or Flo for me, Jameer Thurman or Flo Normalade. And I think you were saying that Flo has another year on his contract.
I think so, yeah.
So, I mean, So otherwise, I think there's no way they're going to.
Because he didn't sign a 1-year deal for Toronto.
Yeah. Man, has that ever worked out? Man, is he ever good?
I mean, it's health. Yep. That's all it is, right?
And the Stamps got bad luck because the guy that, not that they like made a decision. I know that they wanted to keep Flo as well,
right? But they brought in James Vaughters,
and then he got injured. I mean, how different is the season if they have James Vaughters? I really do wonder that.
You know what? I think they're probably still a playoff team. So how different is the season? I mean, when he got injured, they were 2-7, 2-8. Like he got injured just before Labor Day. So
that's not true.
Yes, it is. He wasn't injured much before. He wasn't injured much. There were only a 2-win team with him.
It was week 6 because
So they would have been 2-4, 2-3.
Yeah. He was.
Week 6. They're not hosting a playoff game. I still don't think they're hosting a playoff game, even with Vaughters in there.
Oh yeah, I mean that's probably true.
So are they? So what difference did it make to their season? Not substantially, because they're probably still headed on the road to BC this week.
You're
right. I mean, I'm not trying to downplay how good a player he is because he's phenomenal.
Oh, I just think that I think you're right that I can't make the argument that having James Vaughters in the Stampeders lineup means that it's not worth 5 wins.
Right.
But I think that the pressure that he brings, they didn't get for most of the season. And I do
No.
think that the pressure from the defensive end spot was an issue for them. So I do think it substantially improves who
It,
they are as a
yeah,
team.
it's gotten a lot better lately.
And like, let's right off the bat, like they probably beat Edmonton in the rematch. Like, there's just like, there were a couple close games here where
there are
one player
2 or 3 wins, probably.
Yeah.
Is he 2 or 3 wins? What's that baseball stat they use? WAR, wins over replacement.
Yeah.
You know, I think is it 2 or 3 wins, maybe even 4, possibly. But I still don't think that they're hosting a playoff game with James Vaughters in the lineup, given their other injuries. If Bryce Bell doesn't go down for 6 games, and you've got Vaughters and Bell, then maybe you're looking at even more. I mean, and I like,
it's the crazy thing that like it's so similar to how like I was saying, like it's just hard to just spend the whole season complaining about
stats.
Like
Same
it's
thing with
also
injuries.
just like, well, it's with injuries. Like there are just people who don't seem to care that Jalen Philpott would have been a starter, that Malik Henry would have been a starter,
Right?
Clark Barnes was a starter.
Clark Barnes was
like,
phenomenal.
Yeah, like
for
this team is down 3 of its 5 starting receivers, and then when you consider that, I mean, they brought in Markeith Ambles in part because of that.
Yes,
but Ambles was playing pretty well in starting before he decided he didn't want to be here.
Right.
Like so, like arguably, that's 4 of their 5.
Yeah.
Like that's like arguably Reggie Begelton's the only like starter who is.
I mean, I get maybe Trey Odom's Dukes, but even he's not been.
Ambles took over for him.
Yeah, Ambles. Well, and that's interesting because when Ambles took over for him, he was leading the league in targets and receptions, and Ambles still took the job from him. So that I think said something from a Stampeders perspective that they still weren't happy with his production, even though he was producing. And I think that's always an interesting thing for me too. And the Stampeders have done that recently too. They took out they had Micah Awe out in favor of Silas Stewart when Micah Awe was leading the league in defensive plays. You know, now I admittedly I don't know who started on Friday. I didn't look at that one because I was looking at other things.
Micah
but
was in there.
I know Micah was in there because he had the sack. Yeah. And he had an interception as well. But
I was recording the afterburner here in the studio for the first quarter. So
right, of course.
Yes. So I didn't actually get to watch the first quarter.
Yeah.
Dude, this has been an hour. I said it was going to be half an hour.
It's all right. I bumped us up to 10, so because I knew we'd take the time.
Well, I mean, I can ask if there's anything else you like really feel, we should talk about.
The Winnipeg Blue Bombers are not coming out of the West.
Come on. Yes, they are.
No, they're not.
Why do you say that they're not?
I don't care which of the 2 teams comes out of that West semifinal. They're beating Winnipeg.
Why do you think that?
Because Winnipeg has gotten old. Winnipeg has gotten slow. And I think all you have to do is jam up Oliveira in the middle, and they're not going to be able to beat you. Especially now that you have Dalton Schoen out for the season.
Dalton Schoen's significant. I mean, they still have.
Yes, I get it. I get it. I get it. But they're not going to be, that week off is going to hurt the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. And the Bombers, I don't even think start their starters next week. And here's the interesting thing. The 6-11 team may be resting starters next week.
Oh, it's so funny. John Bender, like, literally called it. He was like, he was on the show and he was like, honestly, I think the Stamps are going to be the one that
rest starters
that most needs the rest, so they're going to take advantage of it. I don't know how much rest, like Reggie, you're not playing.
No, Reggie doesn't play.
I still feel Kadeem could probably use the reps.
Maybe.
The Euro line, you can't. I don't know. Like, CFL rosters just aren't really big enough. But yeah, the Stamps have to rest guys. It's just they've also had 2 bye weeks in the last month and a bit. So it's like it's not like they're particularly.
No, but I think you're still going to get. I'm very interested to see whether or not Dave Dickinson is going to check in and see where Logan Bonner is. Yeah. I'm very curious to see whether or not Logan Bonner gets.
There's no way Jake's not playing the whole game.
I don't think Jake plays the whole game, but I don't know if Dave Dickinson feels like he needs to. I mean, it's not like Jake has been great, but he's also just had a new baby. So if you take away the start from him even now and you say, hey, look, man, we're in the playoffs. You're obviously the starter heading into the playoffs. You're going to start against BC, but we're going to let you stay out because you've got a new baby. You can get some rest. You can help your wife. Yeah. You can do all of these things for a week. without having to worry about Winnipeg with Jackson,
You
Jeff
kept these
Coat, and
quarterbacks
Jefferson coming
around
at
for
you.
a reason, supposedly. So
Well, yeah,
them.
and Chris Reynolds is on the practice roster still.
Yeah, smoke him if you got him. Like,
Yeah. I mean, I don't want this to sound like I'm disparaging Tommy Stevens, but I don't know that I see Tommy Stevens as the starter for this team, given what he's done through the air when he's had the chance.
Yeah, no, I don't.
And I don't want to sound like I'm calling him out or nothing, but there's a reason why Bonner and Reynolds have both been around all year. I think this is the game where you see what you have in either of them.
Yeah, you need to figure it out because you don't want both of them around. And I mean, there are two sides to that. Either they think that both of them are good enough, or that they're not sure that either of them is good enough. So figure it out.
Yep.
Right? Like,
and why not throw them against Winnipeg's defense? You're not going to get a better idea of whether a quarterback can survive than throwing him against Winnipeg's defense.
I'm very curious as to who plays on Winnipeg's defense.
Yeah. But even scheme-wise, their defense is good.
Yeah, I will say that, like, I've covered some pretty terrible football games. So have you.
This year especially.
It wasn't last year. It would have been the year before that the Bombers had there was no movement that could happen in the last game of the season.
Oh yeah.
And it was just
terrible
the most
football,
god awful game of football that I've ever seen.
But here's why Winnipeg will lose, by the way, in the West Final, because I diverted away from that.
Okay, I love this take.
I do think that they're not. I think that BC has seen what Calgary's done to them up the middle and what Winnipeg did to them up the middle in the last two games. Mm-hmm. And I think they're going to take steps to correct that, overprotect the box. I think Ryan Phillips will move away from some of what he's done, because what BC has done so successfully all season is they've been so far ahead that the run hasn't mattered defensively. Mm-hmm. Now they have seen in the last 2 weeks that the run absolutely matters defensively. You need to be able to stop these teams from gashing you for 7 or 8 yards at a time, and you need to prevent that while you're giving your offense a chance to win. I think Winnipeg is older and slower. I think Big Hill is a step slow. He made that big play on Cornelius last night, but that's a goal line stand. I think Big Hill's a step slower than he used to be. And that's not to say that Adam Big Hill's still not a great player, because he is. He's also not Adam Big Hill from 2 or 3 years ago. Same thing with Jefferson, Jeffcoat, that defensive line. They're not the 21 version of those players anymore. And I think you're starting to see Winnipeg be vulnerable. And I think that this is the spot where they've got old. I think Caleros isn't as good as he was. And I think taking Dalton Schoen out of the equation makes him worse than he would be otherwise. He's made some suspect decisions this year. This is the year that Winnipeg doesn't make it back.
I don't think I don't think the Calgary Stampeders have a shot in hell of beating the Winnipeg Blue Bombers in a playoff game.
They've been within a touchdown of the Winnipeg Blue Bombers in every game for the last 3 seasons. And something at some point has to bounce the Stampeders' way, and it has been the last couple weeks. You've got the goal line fumble against BC. You've got the pick 6 against Saskatchewan. All of these plays that were going against the Stampeders in the beginning half of the year are starting to go for the Stampeders, and I believe in the football gods. I believe in the football gods evening things out over time.
I had you on because I knew you were going to give this type of take, and I love it. So I wildly disagree with you.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah. That's fine. But I think either team that wins the West semifinal is going to the Grey Cup.
Okay, I like that. Since I've got you for a minute.
Yeah.
What is
Cowboys are on a bye this week? I don't even need to be home for 11.
We have October 27th, Winnipeg at Calgary. Meaningless game. October 28th, Hamilton at Montreal. Even more meaningless game where the two teams are going to be playing the next week in the playoffs. And then
straight handoffs for 60 minutes in that game.
Toronto at Ottawa. There can't be a more unwatchable week of CFL football in history than the one that we have right now, right? I love this league. I do a podcast on this league despite covering a different league. I adore the CFL. This is gonna be awful. I shouldn't be saying this. Watch the CFL, guys. It's great. Canadian football support. But Hamilton Montreal is going to be one of the worst games in CFL history. These two teams are just shutting right down.
But I mean, at the same time, maybe that's where you also get something spectacular. Like, are they going to be running trick plays in the offense? No. Are they going very deep in the playbook? No. Are they really kind of trying to be aggressive and super, No. But at the same time, maybe there's that, broken coverage play. Maybe there's another dribble punt, whatever. Like, give me something. There's the best thing about the CFL is even bad CFL football.
Oh yeah, it gives you fun.
Is better than bad NFL football.
I feel
bad NFL football is unwatchable. Bad CFL football is still like, I might be on my phone a little more during the game, and not be glued to it. But bad CFL football is still fun to watch.
I mean, I've had a couple games this year where I haven't had that much fun, if I'm being perfectly honest.
Yeah,
but like I take your point. I like Toronto, Ottawa. Like that's one of those games where you're like, do they have to play it? Just because, like, well, like poor Ottawa. Like you're out, you're eliminated. The Argos are just want to know.
Oh, but hurt. Danny, they have to play for pride and jobs next year and all this other nonsense that never. That people use to sell the game. So one of the reasons, I mean, I think when you watch a bad game, and I think our perspective is different, right? Because you have to write about the game. And so the game has to have something for you to write about. And when it doesn't, it makes your job so much more difficult to fill the space, right? And so a bad game for you is doubly bad. And so it makes it worse than it does, I think, for the average fan who can just go, yeah, I mean, it wasn't great. But is it better than, watching the...
Was it a bad way to spend my Friday night?
Yeah.
Maybe like made myself some sangria, like sat on the couch with my wife.
Have a couple drinks, have a couple friends over.
Yeah.
Play, play stupid bets on the game. Like, don't necessarily go to your over-under wager sites, but make ridiculous bets in the room.
Yep.
What was that old system they used to play in karaoke or in those trivia bars where you could bet on run right, run left? Bet, have fun with it. Just, find the enjoyment in the game. There's no storyline to any of these games at all.
No,
but
and again, it sets us up. Like there's bad luck. Like it's not the CFL.
Toronto's going for a franchise record and wins.
Yep.
They need to beat Ottawa.
And it is like, there's no one to be mad about that none of these games matter. It's bad luck. It's how the season played out. Like you can't.
It's been worse in previous years.
I don't know.
Meaning that like meaningless games have been further out. Because
I don't know that they've ever had a week where all three nothing.
Last week was, or this past weekend of games all mattered.
Yep.
They all had playoff implications. BC could have kept their hopes alive for first overall in the West.
Yep.
Calgary was trying to get a playoff spot. Toronto's chasing their best record ever. Saskatchewan is like, every game this week mattered enough that we can be okay with the idea that last week was that next week is.
Yeah. Make no mistake. I actually
is meaningless.
This week was sort of fun.
Yeah.
We haven't talked about anything, but I'll do that in my intro. I'll knock all that out.
Yeah, no, that's okay.
But okay, real quick, I will say what I do think we are set up for. I think the East playoffs are going to be unbelievable.
Going to be phenomenal.
Like Montreal and Hamilton, I think are so tight.
Great game.
They're also teams that like we don't know everything about them. They are still. We're going to let you go. But and then honestly, like I think both of those teams coming off a win are going to at least feel like they have a shot against the Argos. I think the Argos are the best team in the East by a long distance. They're the best team in the league. But like both of those two teams have like played pretty well in the back half of the season. They have not stumbled into the playoffs.
Hamilton has before they lost to BC the other night, last week. They'd only lost to Toronto since before Labor Day. Like, Hamilton's becoming the team we expected them to be.
And I think that like Montreal, the additions of Lemon and Sankey, but like there's a lot of good players on that team. I think Cody has showed up pretty decently. Like both of those two teams are going to feel like if we play our A game, Argos look out, which I love. The West, as you talked about, apparently the Bombers are terrible.
They're not terrible.
I know.
They're just old. I've seen this before. The Stampeders did this for a long time. You're dominant for 3 or 4 seasons, and then you lose a playoff game. That's how this Winnipeg dynasty started.
Yep.
Was by Calgary going to 3 straight Grey Cups and then losing the game to the Bombers to get to the 4th one.
But the difference is that the Stamps were trying to get younger while staying on top, and it didn't really work.
No, and the Bombers have not done that. The Bombers have stayed old, and they've gotten old, and I think this is when they get upset.
I love it. Hot take. Ryan Ballentine, 3 Down Nation. Go Stamps Go podcast. Anything else I got to plug?
No, those are pretty much it. You can find me on all social media platforms at BBCanRyan.
We don't acknowledge X, so on Twitter.
Twitter, of course.
Yes.
Threads, Blue Sky.
Are you on Blue Sky?
I'm on Blue Sky. Do you need an invite code?
I may. I'm getting close. I promised myself.
I got 5 of them right now.
Like when all of these new ones were coming out, and they were like, I would have had to be like Danny.Austin@something.net, and I was like, you dorks, I'm not doing that.
Yeah. Blue Sky's usernames are still a little.
Yeah, that seems like that's some real nerdlinger crap. And I'm just not.
I want to find out who the winner is going to be. And for me, it's not Threads yet. I expected it to be Threads, but Threads is terrible.
I'm not quitting Elon and going to Zuck.
No, I understand that. But what Threads is missing out on is I want to follow. I want to see the content from the people I follow, not a bunch of famous people that you're jamming into my feed.
Oh, is that what
I don't give a shit about them.
Yeah.
I don't care what those people are saying.
I'm still like, it may wind up being Blue Sky. Like it feels like that's where the most people are going.
It's where a lot of the CFL
and like
people are going is Blue Sky.
Yeah. And like the entire utility of Twitter has always been that it's where everyone was.
Yes.
Like that's like the functionality, whatever. Like that's the thing. So that I just want to go where everyone else goes.
Yeah.
And then like, I mean, it matters to my literal financial well-being.
Yes.
To have a social media following. So whatever.
But yeah, BBCanRyan everywhere. If you need a Blue Sky invite code, let me know.
Thanks, buddy. Really appreciate having me on.
Yeah, good times.
Guys, what are you doing tonight? I don't know what you're doing tonight. You're probably looking for something. Guys, you got to go check out Mug's Pub. This is probably my favorite pub in the city, 1330 15th Avenue Southwest, right in the Beltline. Honestly, they do it all. I, for years, played trivia on Wednesday nights at Mug's. It's the best trivia night in the city. Other nights, they got music. They got specials every single night. Some of the best food and drink specials in the entire city are at Mug's Pub. You want wine, you want beer, you want cocktails. They got it all. Big fan of their fish and chips. They got some amazing pizza. You want to watch the game? They got TV screens. You want to just have a drink with friends? Perfect spot to do it. You want to have some food? As I said, it's delicious. Mug's Pub. We love having them as a sponsor. We love having them just down the road from us here at our studios. Check out Mug's Pub. They're the best. All right. That's it for me, guys. I'm not gonna spend too much time here on the outro. Really appreciate that conversation with Ryan. That was awesome. He came in. He's dealing with a shoulder injury. We didn't really touch on that, but came in, needed him. Me and Busby's been feeling sick, so Ryan rose to the occasion, and I really, really appreciate that. And that was an awesome talk. I feel like we touched on just about everything. Did our best. Love that Ryan comes in with the hot takes. Winnipeg not win a playoff game. Really? Come on, Ryan. I love it. I love it. It's a good bit of fun, but thank you to Mug's Pub. Honestly, make sure you check them out. They've got, weekly specials that are unbelievable. Yeah, they got it all. Also, if you're a Buffalo Bills fan, make sure you check them out. They got an awesome community. I dropped by a little while back, and lots of Bills fans there watching the games, but lots of NFL just across the board on Sundays at Mug's, and their food's terrific. I've talked about Wednesday trivia a bunch, but their daily specials are amazing. Thank you, Mug's Pub, and shout out to Fraser and Fig. We've been talking about them all year. Love them. And yeah, that's kind of it from us, guys. We're gonna be back on Thursday morning. I know we have Ben Grant. We'll see. Might try to get someone else as well. Talk a little bit about the Bombers Stamps game there. And those playoffs. We're there. We made it. Anyways, thanks to our sponsors. Thanks to you for listening. Please like and subscribe. Tell your friends if you think that they could use a little CFL content as it heats up for the playoffs. We appreciate you. Thank you so much. This is Live from the 55. I'm Danny Austin. Cheers.
Hey guys, thanks for watching. Be sure to check out more of our content right here on the Flames Nation YouTube page. We had a bunch of great long-form interviews. You can check out some videos we've done as well outside of the studio. And of course, if you want more writing or merchandise stuff, flamesnation.ca or nationgear.ca. Appreciate you watching.